So as I mentioned, we are going to be exploring the topic of abundance this morning. And as I'm listening to the news and aware of the government shutdown, I find myself just with my heart really open to those that are directly impacted if they have been furloughed, or if maybe they're afraid that they're about to lose their job. It could be some of us in this room, some of us online. I think about how timely it is for us to remember, or if we're brand new to unity and to metaphysics, to learn perhaps for the first time a different way of looking at abundance, a different way of looking at what it means to be prosperous, what it means to have wealth. Because there's a lot, I think, in our culture, and perhaps a lot in the way that we were raised, that I think is incorrect, or at the very least, incomplete. Either incorrect or incomplete. So I want to begin this series with understanding, the source of abundance and clarifying some terms and giving us some things that we can practice and begin to see the results of in our lives. So while this is a series on abundance and we will be talking a bit about prosperity, it is not specific to prosperity. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind. Prosperity is just one way we might measure abundance, but abundance is a much broader topic. Abundance refers, as we look at it in unity, to a core principle. And that core principle is that we do live and move and have our being in this energy and this presence that some of us call God, others call it by a different name. And that energy and that presence is a source of substance. And it is substance that is the vehicle through which we manifest whatever it is that we need or desire or want in our lives. So abundance encompasses a very broad range of experiences. We're laying the foundation to look at the source of abundance today, because if we don't understand what the ultimate source is and what our connection to it is, then we will likely look for it in the wrong places. Remember that song that was popular quite a number of years ago now, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places? Some of you remember that song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places? Or at least that was a line in the song. A lot of times I think people look for prosperity in the wrong places, look for abundance in the wrong places. And so our starting point is simple but profound. It is this, that substance, divine energy, is omnipresent. Substance, divine energy, is omnipresent, meaning it is everywhere equally present. It does not mean that we are all tapping into it in the same way. It doesn't even mean that we all understand that this divine substance is everywhere present, but the fact that we may be ignorant of it or not know how to attract it or how to use it does not change the truth that it is everywhere equally present at all times to all people, whether we feel deserving of it or not, whether we understand it or not. It is equally present. This is what I think is meant mystically in that line in Scripture that says, we live, move, and have our being in it. We live, move, and have our being in it. Another core and important concept for us in unity about abundance is that we believe it is a birthright, that it is not a sin to be wealthy. It is what we are meant to experience, not at the expense of another, but we are meant to experience a life that works. I like the word wealth personally much better than the word prosperity. The word wealth comes from an Old English word, I think I'm pronouncing it right, weal, which referred to well-being. Take that in for a moment. Well-being. When I think of the word prosperity, I don't necessarily think of well-being. But when I think of and understand this concept of wealth, that it originally meant the well-being of the community, the well-being of all, does that not sound very deeply spiritual? I think it does. The well-being of body, the well-being of mind, the well-being of spirit, the well-being of life circumstances and situations, wellness, wholeness. So one of the things we want to do is clarify terms, or at least the way I'm going to be using these terms in this series. And the two terms I want to clarify are abundance and prosperity. In New Thought, we tend to use these terms interchangeably, and I think that that is a mistake. I think they are different things. I think abundance is not the same thing as prosperity. Prosperity is not the same thing as abundance. Abundance is a state of being. Abundance is a state of consciousness. Think about that for a moment. It's a state of being, a state of consciousness. It's a way we feel. It's a way we look at life. It's a way we experience life. Abundance is a state of being, a state of consciousness. Prosperity is the outer expression or manifestation of abundance. Prosperity is the outer expression or manifestation of abundance. Prosperity can be measured. You can look and see what you have in your bank account, right? Or what you have in investments if you have investments. You can look and see what your house is worth if you own a home. You can see the value of, you can measure it, right? And I'm not speaking negatively about any of those things, but there's a difference. Abundance is a state of being, a state of consciousness, of feeling. Whereas prosperity is something that is seen, that is felt, that can be measured, that can be sensed. It's conditional. It's conditional. A person can learn, and I think needs to learn, here's where some of the practice is, to develop an abundance consciousness regardless of what the circumstances are. Does that make sense? And when we understand that we can develop and deepen that abundance consciousness, and we do the work, it will begin to influence the good that comes into our life that is measurable good. When we get that we live and move and have our being in this divine substance, this ultimate source from which everything comes, when we get that, what suddenly starts to happen is we become much more creative. We become much more open. We become much more curious, much more willing to explore new ideas, explore new avenues, practice new things, all of which are pathways for prosperity, the measurable stuff, to flow through us. Prosperity, at least a certain amount of it, is important for all of us. Would you not agree? And when we don't have it, if we look at our bank account and it's really low and the bills are really high and we don't have the prosperity to meet our immediate needs, our whatever it is that are our basic things, we feel that, don't we? It can be very, very stressful. A certain amount of prosperity is absolutely essential in the way that our society is set up. We just need money to pay bills, right? To buy our basic necessities. And without it, we can feel increased stress and anxiety. Our living conditions are impacted by the prosperity that we have. Our nutrition can be impacted by the prosperity that we have or we don't have. I'll admit something that I'm embarrassed to admit, but it was out of absolute ignorance and unawareness. I did not realize that it is far cheaper to buy empty calories than it is to buy healthy, nutritious food. I used to wonder why it seemed that people who were struggling financially oftentimes were rather overweight. I'm embarrassed to say that, but it was true because I didn't know that there is a direct connection between the cost of healthy, nutritious food and our ability to access it. Does that make sense? And maybe you, like me, at one point in your life didn't understand that. And so there's a basic level of prosperity that I think we all need. I'm trying to look for the right word here. I'll just say was moved, and it made a lasting impact on me when I first read or learned of Gandhi's statement that there is enough for everyone's need in the world, but not for everyone's greed. And so, yeah, isn't that beautiful? Enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. If there was one human quality I could help eliminate in the world, do you know what that quality would be? Is greed. For me, when I think of so many of the ills in our world today, that if we go deep enough, we often find that greed is part of it. And why are people greedy? I think people can be greedy out of ignorance. People can be greedy out of not understanding the principles of abundance, of not understanding what it means to be connected to Source. Anyway, that's a whole other lesson. I don't mean to be going into that lesson right now. So prosperity, a certain measure of it is absolutely necessary for all of us. But I think we need to come into terms of what that is for us individually. Or otherwise, we will be on this hamster wheel of always trying to get more and more and more, thinking that more and more and more is going to make us what? Happy. And eventually we find out, no, the more and more and more is not the answer of being happier. That the answer of being happier rests in raising our consciousness. So back to the source of abundance. Many of us look at the source of our abundance to be things like, if we're still in our pre-retirement years, we probably look at our jobs, it's common for people to look at their jobs or paycheck as their source of abundance. If they're retired and they've planned well, they may be looking at their investments and the dividends from their investments as their source of abundance. And yet what we understand spiritually is those are channels or containers for abundance, for prosperity, for the measurable. They are not the source. The source is this essence, this energy, this substance of which each and every one of us has absolutely equal access. Nobody has any more access to this divine substance than you do. Do you believe that? Okay, nobody has any more access to it. You and I might have to unlearn some things, and we'll talk about some of those in this series. We may have to unlearn some things. We may have to practice some new behaviors, but nobody has any more access to it. There's no more substance over there than there is right where you are. The early metaphysicians like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore really, really emphasized this. And it becomes a problem for us when we confuse the channel with the source. Because have you noticed that the channels can change from time to time? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I hear from quite a number of our younger people who are trying to find a job right now. How challenging it is. And they're not whining and complaining. It's a reality for a lot of people right now. And so it's really important, if you have a young person in your life or you are that person, to remind yourself again and again that there is a difference between the channel, like your job, and the source, which is the divine energy, the substance, the God presence, whatever you want to call that. It's the ground from which everything that is manifest has come forth. Charles Fillmore taught that substance is the fundamental, meaning absolute basic, the fundamental, invisible, So not like prosperity. Prosperity is wonderful, but we can see it, we can touch it, we can taste it, we can enjoy it, we can drive it, we can live in it, and we can count it. Got it? The fundamental, invisible, so you can't see it, omnipresent, which means what? Everywhere, equally present. Not any more over where Marty is than where Jimmer is. Everywhere equally present, right where you are and right where I am. The fundamental, invisible, omnipresent essence from which all things are created. That ought to give all of us, no matter where we are in our prosperity needs or desires, some relief and some reassurance, some optimism, some hope. It also means that we got some work to do probably to activate it. The fundamental, invisible, omnipresent essence from which all things are created is a spiritual energy, the very body of God or mind essence. And so our connection to the divine is our connection to infinite abundance. Think about that for a moment. Your connection to the divine is your connection, your starting point to infinite abundance. So getting clear on the difference between abundance and prosperity, that one is a state of mind, a state of consciousness, a state of being. The other is a measurable set of circumstances or conditions or situations. Getting clear on that is important. Getting clear on the fact that there's a difference between the channel. Channels can change and dry up, but the source is always there. This divine substance, the energy, the possibility is always there. And that plays right into an important myth that we have to correct in our thinking. And that myth being the myth of scarcity. The myth that we live in a limited universe. All you have to do is look at Mother Nature and you will see that it is limitless. If you have ever planted a garden, here I go again. You plant tomatoes. I promise you there are going to be more tomatoes than you know what to do with. Limitless, abundant. Limitless, abundant. The myth of a limited or scarce universe is a really damaging belief. And I think it is the reason, or it plays into people's greed, because they think that it's a zero-sum game. That if I get, you can't have. That's not true. That's not true. It's not true spiritually. But this myth of scarcity fuels all of this comparison and all of the dynamic of trying to do better than the other person, rather than going back to that English concept of the word wealth, which is what? Well-being, well-being. So as I wrap this up, a little bit of homework here. Don't you love coming to church and getting homework? Sometimes I don't call it homework, and I call it something else, but it really is homework. You know, unity is a way of living and being in the world. And we do our best to provide tools and information that each of us can pick up and use to carve a better life for ourselves and hopefully a better life for others. But we need to do the work. We can't just learn the stuff. We've got to close the gap. I think it was the Buddha who taught this. We have to close the gap between what we know and what we do, what we know and what we do. So a key practice for us is to challenge the myth of a limited universe or the myth of scarcity, to challenge that. So that's one of your practice points this week, is to challenge your thinking around that. And the way you challenge your thinking around that is you step into really identifying, write it down if you need to, bring it to your conscious awareness, the abundance that you already have, the abundance that you already have, and the abundance that you see around you, even if it is not yours. That might require a little bit of growing up work to do, right? right? To say, I can appreciate the fact that somebody else has abundance and prosperity that I want to bring into my life. Their having it doesn't keep me from manifesting what I desire in my life. But it all goes back to, what am I practicing in consciousness? What am I practicing in consciousness? Am I practicing an attitude of abundance? Am I training myself to look and see abundance all around me? Am I training myself to look and see what is present and growing and flourishing? Or have I gotten so good that the first thing I notice is what is broken, missing, or not working? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So putting it into practice, and then going back, constantly going back and asking yourself, am I confusing the channel with the source? Am I confusing the channel with the source? Channels do what? Do I have to go back? Channels can change. They can dry up completely. Does source change? Does source dry up? Does David Stanley have more source where he's sitting than Robin Martin behind him? No. Same amount right where we are, right? So reminding yourself right where you are, the allness, as Eric Butter used to say, the allness and fullness of God is right where you are. Right where you are. That, anchoring in that is going to help you to deepen and expand a consciousness of abundance. And that consciousness of abundance is key to attracting in a healthy way true prosperity into your life. We'll pick this back up next week. Namaste.